welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Tuesday, April 2nd. Reports of troop movements along the border of China and North Korea. Apple backs down after an onslaught by China's state-run media. And 4 new cases of bird flu in another Chinese province. The situation on the Korean peninsula is continuing to destabilize. New threats by North Korea are drawing criticism from Japan and China. Meanwhile, troop movements are continuing along their border.
North Korea is restarting all its nuclear facilities. That includes the Yongbyon nuclear reactor that could have the capacity to make plutonium domestic energy production, as well as nuclear weapons. The announcement made earlier today on state-run North Korean media had sent shockwaves through the international community.
If North Korea is to start maintenance on or restart its nuclear reactor, it would breach the 6-party talks and the UN Security Council resolution and would be a provocative action. We have to respond to this carefully.
China, North Korea's closest, perhaps only ally, is also getting fed up with its neighbors' increasingly militant stance.
The denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and maintaining peace and stability on the peninsula and in Northeast Asia is China's consistent stance.
The Washington Free Beacon has reported that, according to officials from China's People's Liberation Army, troops have been mobilizing along the China-North Korean border since mid-March. Last month saw a lot of troop movement from around the world in the Korean peninsula. The United States and South Korea conducted joint military drills following threats from North Korea to attack U.S. bases in the Pacific. China also conducted naval drills in the Yellow Sea, which was seen as a sign of support for North Korea. And all the while, North Korea had been mobilizing its forces, including mobile and medium-range missile forces.
For several weeks, iPhone and iPod maker Apple has been on the receiving end of a negative publicity campaign in China, drummed up by Chinese state-run media. And finally, on Monday evening, the US tech giant took a surprising step by issuing an apology. But did it really have anything to apologize for?
Technology giant Apple Inc. formally apologized to Chinese consumers on Monday for a miscommunication on its warranty policy. CEO Tim Cook personally signed the apology letter, written in Mandarin and published on Apple's Chinese-language website. For the past 2 weeks, the California-based company has been under attack by Chinese state media. They accused Apple of discriminating against Chinese consumers. But Chinese companies are no beacon of customer service, leading some to wonder if the accusations could be politically motivated.
As well established as Apple is, to do business in China, you need a backer. For other companies who do have this type of backing, they will not be hunted down like this by Chinese media.
China is currently Apple's second largest market, and it's trying to take a bigger bite, directly competing with Chinese-based companies.
Actually, they're using this incident to fan up sentiment against America and other Western democratic countries. They will expand on a tiny issue and try and influence people's thoughts and turn it into a political affair. This is what the CCP's media does.
The media attack was over Apple's iPhone repair policy, which replaces the casing in all other countries but China. Apple says the reason it doesn't in China is because Chinese law says it must give the user another year warranty. The case has set an example for foreign companies in China about just how effective state-run propaganda machines can be.
CCTV and People's Daily all talked about national pride and feel Apple is discriminating against Chinese people. Actually, Apple is an American company, and a world-famous one at that. The Communist Party wants to take it down a notch because the U.S. is now doing more checks and imposing taxes on Chinese imports, and this has angered the regime.
Apple says it's changing its policy to completely replace broken iPhone 4 and 4Ss. It will also extend its warranty after replacement, something it was accused of skimping on before.
Tibetans have been fleeing their homeland into neighboring countries to escape the heavy-handed rule by the Chinese regime. Nepal has been one of their main destinations, but now even as Tibetans travel over perilous mountains in their bid for freedom, they may not find it because of pressure from Beijing.
Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter urged the Chinese regime on Monday not to pressure Nepal to keep out Tibetan refugees. Carter is currently in Nepal to help push along a delayed national election.
I believe that the Tibetan refugees should be welcomed. There has been, as you know, a tacit agreement in the past that refugees coming out of Tibet would not be abused when they arrive here. And there's a fairly large population of Tibetan refugees here.
In fact, around 20,000 Tibetans live in the Himalayan country. They fled their homeland because of the harsh rule and oppression by the Chinese regime. Nepali police used to capture exiled Tibetans and hand them over to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. They are then moved on to India, where Tibetan's exiled spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, is residing.
Lately, I understand at the border there has been some harassment of people coming from Tibet to Nepal. The Chinese government is putting pressure on the officials in Nepal to interrupt this movement of people. I think they should have a right to go where they wish.
As Nepal increases its trade engagements with China, Carter says it's become increasingly harder for the hundreds of Tibetans who are looking to escape into Nepal. The Nepali government has cracked down on Tibetan protesters against China in the past. The Chinese regime is Nepal's key trading partner and largest donor.
Chinese health authorities reported on Sunday about the 2 deaths in Shanghai from a new strain of bird flu. Now, 4 more cases in nearby Jiangsu province have been discovered, and the patients are in a critical condition. State-run media are now trying to quell fears that the H7N9 virus is being spread from human to human.
4 more cases of avian flu were reported today, all in China's Jiangsu province, a neighbor's Shanghai and Anhui province, where 3 existing cases were confirmed on Sunday. The local health bureau in Jiangsu said that 3 women and 1 man have come down with the H7N9 virus and are in a critical condition. This brings the total number of reported cases in China to 7. Chinese media was quick to quell fears that the virus was being spread through humans. Speaking about the patient from Anhui province, the doctor of the 35-year-old woman in critical condition said the person last in contact with her is doing well.
The person who was the last to have contacted Han is also healthy after the medical observation period, which usually runs a week only. Since such a disease is not familiar to medical staff, the medical observation period is extended to 12 days.
State-run Xinhua News Agency reports that because few people have contracted this particular strain, there has been little research done on it. There is also no vaccine for the virus in China or abroad. 2 people died earlier last month in Shanghai, a 27 and an 87-year-old man. The younger victim was a pork vendor. On Monday, Chinese press assured citizens that the cases were not caused by the 16,000 dead pigs floating in Shanghai's Huangpu River. The Chinese public has demanded state media to be more forthcoming about potential diseases after it covered up the 2003 SARS outbreak. The respiratory disease consequently spread all over China and to 12 other countries, killing at least 774 people worldwide.
And coming up after the break, China's largest bank looking to buy 1/5 of this Taiwanese bank. What a new state-backed study has found about China's dwindling water resources, and a drunken man and his very lucky escape. And welcome back. China's largest bank announced today it's looking to buy a 20% stake in Taiwan's Bank SinoPac. The purchase by the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, or ICBC, would be the first investment by a Chinese bank in a Taiwanese one. The proposal comes a day after Taiwan promised to relax the investment limits for Chinese banks. According to Chinese state-run Xinhua News Agency, ICBC says the deal is expected to be worth around $625 million. Taiwan's President Ma Ying-jeou has pushed for closer ties with the communist regime since he took office in 2008. But the efforts have drawn criticism for opening up Taiwan to Beijing's hostile intentions to ultimately take control of the island. Regulators in both Taiwan and China will have to approve the ICBC deal. The world's largest food company, Nestlé, is building a coffee center in Pu'er in China's Yunnan province. Nestlé plans to invest $16 million in the center as part of its plan to promote coffee in the largely tea-drinking country. The company says the center will provide training for local farmers and will educate Chinese consumers on the nuances of coffee. Nestlé says coffee is becoming more popular in China. The company carried out a study that found that more Chinese people are drinking it socially rather than just as a pick-me-up. Nestlé says it has worked with coffee growers in China for the last 25 years. It says it hopes to double the amount of coffee it buys from Chinese farmers by 2015. We've been hearing a lot about water pollution in China, but a recent state-backed study has found that pollution may not be the biggest worry for China's water resources. That's because a large number of rivers are disappearing altogether every single year. Here's more.
The results of the first national water census conducted by the Chinese Ministry of Water Resources were released last Thursday. The study shows that since the 1990s, at least 1,000 rivers have been disappearing from China's landscape every year. Half of the rivers gone were over 60 square miles in volume. Chief Engineer of Sichuan Bureau of Geology and Minerals says the water is disappearing because of unsustainable growth.
With the expansion of cities, construction of businesses and industrial parks took the place of landfills over rivers. Also, the majority of water conservation development is derived from intercepting rivers and diverting water. The construction either cuts the river flow off or simply kills the river.
Chinese state-run Global Times agreed, citing experts who said it was, quote, a direct manifestation of headlong, ill-conceived development. It also said that large hydroelectric projects such as the Three Gorges Dam were likely to have played a role. The Chinese Ministry of Water Resources revealed that there are now 22,909 rivers with over 62 square miles of water. 20 years ago, there were more than 50,000 rivers that size. So where have 28,000 rivers gone?
Current developments in China are an unsustainable model. This is at the cost of excessive consumption of natural resources. It destroys nature and causes great pain to the people. The government is responsible for it.
The United Nations has listed China as one of the 13 countries most affected by water scarcity. Official Chinese data shows that waste has led to 40% of China's rivers being seriously polluted. Over 24% of China's water is of such low quality that it is completely unusable. New Chinese Premier Li Keqiang pledged more transparent pollution policies. Authorities know that the issue of environmental pollution has become a source of civil unrest.
For at least 10 years, pollution has been a social issue. Many protests are because of pollution. It is happening every day and getting more and more serious.
The Global Times commentary indicated that pollution has replaced land confiscation as the issue that angers the majority of Chinese. It stated, quote, the disappearance of rivers poses both an environmental and social threat to China.
Many of us have found ourselves in unusual situations, especially after a bit of overindulgence. For one man in China who tried to drink away his sorrows last Friday, he found himself at the center of a precarious rescue mission. Here's more.
It's an unusual sight, to say the least. A man dangling off high-tension cables 30 feet above the ground. The footage was taken last Friday in China's northern Shanxi province. The man was drunk and apparently managed to climb up the utility pole, perhaps so he can rest and let the alcohol wear off. Even in his precarious position, the man didn't seem to realize the danger he's in. But these spectators did. They called the fire department and the power company. The power supply was immediately cut off, and the fire department set up a massive air mattress underneath in case he fell. Some gentle persuasion by the firefighter didn't seem enough to get him to calm down. Instead, the drunk man climbed further along the cables. Then he fell. Luckily, it was just onto the lower cables, but by now he couldn't hang on for much longer. Then it was a free fall onto the giant mattress below. Luckily, medical staff said he escaped without injuries. They did find excessive alcohol in his body. The man later told a reporter that he drank alcohol because he was in a bad mood.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more about China-related content, visit our website at ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is China Focus with Shali Zhang. Stay tuned.